right. So today I'm here to talk to you about building mobile applications with Framework7 and Vue. But first, because I am a narcissist, I would like to talk a little bit about myself. So I kind of wander around doing presentations on lots of things, and this is something I started almost a year ago now, and I like to call it Infinite Simons, or Simons all the way down. So each time I do a talk, I get somebody to take a picture of me, and that becomes this slide for the next talk I do. So this is me at an Ottawa JavaScript event, and in that picture, there's one for me at a DevFest in Poland, or sorry, not Poland, Czech Republic, and then NC DevCon, and then NC DevCon again, and it just keeps on going all the way down. So it's been lots of fun. If you need to get a hold of me, probably the best way to do it is via that Twitter account, MacDonst, MacDonst. It seems really weird, but that was my Unix user ID a million years ago at university. It's available everywhere because no one would actually get a stupid ID like that, and it stands for MacDonald Simon Thomas. So again, like Chris said, if I'm not on a social network platform, that's going to be my user ID eventually. So, all right. Let's see, what else do we want to mention here? The slides for all of this talk, I'll tweet it out afterwards. I'll make sure the folks at FITC get this, so you don't have to madly copy down code or take pictures of the slides unless you really want to, so don't worry about that. Okay, so now, have you ever noticed that building nice-looking mobile applications is really hard? I mean, it's not easy to get it looking like perfectly nice. So whenever I'm taking a look at building a new mobile application, I envision it in my mind, I go through, I get all of these wonderful slides and animations and things that I have, and then it's going to look just like this amazing Van Gogh picture. And then when I actually, put it into practice, it ends up looking a lot more like this. It's a child's crayon drawing. I have no artistic talent whatsoever. It wasn't until later that I realized that it's like, why did I give Van Gogh cat's eyes? I'm like, what was I thinking at that point in time? So honestly, I don't know. So why is that so hard? Why is designing mobile applications, getting it to look nice, why is it so hard? And honestly, I think it's because, CSS is awesome. I'm sure you've seen this joke before, but I had to repeat it again. I am not a designer. I have horrible design chops. CSS, I don't understand it. I don't know why. I've been using CSS for over 20 years now, or however long CSS has been around, because I've been doing this for way too long. Oh God, I feel old right now. But there's something about it I don't grok. And in the industry, we seem to kind of put designers down as second-class citizens, which they really are not, because they are very, very, very important to the process. You need them in your company. You need a great one. So my pro tip to all of you is to work with a great designer, okay? Now my pro tip to you is, if you can, marry a great designer, because they actually come cheaper that way. So, all right. Also, another reason that I'm bad at this stuff is because I'm super lazy. And photo credit, once again, goes to my daughter, who caught me over Christmas. Now, I do want to say that basically this is hereditary, because my dad will fall asleep at the drop of a hat, sometimes even while driving, which is an amazing experience. Yeah, it's great driving down the 401. Dad's falling asleep. He's going into the other lane. Okay, back to this. So that's why I use something like Framework7 to save myself an absolute ton of time. I don't really have to worry about getting all of the CSS perfectly correct and making sure that the buttons look the way that they should. I just use Framework7. It just saves me a ton. So what is Framework7? It's an open source toolkit, and it's used to develop iOS and Android applications with native look and feel. You can also use it for developing progressive web apps, like any kind of web application altogether. It's a real fantastic project. There's a guy, amazingly enough, it's a guy out of Russia who started it, and we've been kind of helping contribute to the open source project as well. If you are not familiar with Vue, if you're just kind of here just getting started with it, you don't have to use Framework7 Vue. There's the original API, which is basically a jQuery-like API. So if you understand jQuery, you'll be able to pick it up really quickly. And there's even a port of Framework7 to React. So if you're a React developer and you're just kind of skulking in the background here and you don't want to let anybody know, it's okay. You can still use Framework7. And in fact, I really recommend using Framework7's React and using Preact compatible to use the Preact project, which is an even smaller version of the React API. And that's developed by another Canadian, so I got to give Jason Miller a thumbs up for doing Preact. Unfortunately, he is now a traitor to the world because he is moving to Boston. Yeah, sorry? Yeah, I know. That's Jen Looper. If you Jen will be talking later today. She's also from Boston, so yeah. Ask her to do her accent. It'll be awesome. It's going to be wicked smart. All right. All right. So this is what Framework7 kind of looks like right out of the box. So forgive me if this isn't super fast right now, because basically this is from a website hosted in Russia. But you can see that we take... Yeah, it's the framework. This is basically an embedded iframe in this presentation right now. But you can see that the buttons for both Android and iOS, you can have the usual buttons. And one of the things that I really like about what Vlad has done with Framework7 is he's really paid attention to the way that material works. So when I click on this button and I hold it down, you can actually see how the touch kind of fades out from where the mouse is down. So he's done some really fantastic stuff with this. And again, let's see, what was the other one I wanted to call out to? Yeah, so the nav bar, it all looks exactly like it would if you're on iOS or Android. So one of the nice things about this is you could particularly pick your application to start with the iOS theme or the Android theme and have it be that way all the time, or you can have Framework7 auto-detect it for you. So depending upon what platform you're running on, the UI changes automatically for you. And I'll kind of give you a little bit of a demo of that later. So there's all sorts of basically amazing looking components here that you can use right out of the box that work exactly like they would in a native application. A lot of times I would like to caution people against trying to get this pixel perfect, looking like a native application, because a lot of times you run into what's called the uncanny valley. Has anybody here heard of the uncanny valley before? All right, we got someone way back there. Why don't you give us a quick description? No, it was you. Yeah, you.
Uncanny valley is when something looks almost like reality, but not quite. So say it's in the movie Polar Express.
Yes. Yeah, that is a fantastic description. Thank you so much for that. And Polar Express is a beautiful example of that, because I still have nightmares about Tom Hanks in that movie, because it's like, it's Tom Hanks, but it's not Tom Hanks, and it's very scary. So a lot of times when you're getting into kind of making your application look a lot like a native application, users can tell because it's not just quite right. But the guys at Framework7, or I should say the folks at Framework7, damn it, I already screwed up. The folks at Framework7 have done a really good job of making sure that it is pixel perfect. Alex and I were just talking about that. We are doing our best now to be inclusive as possible, and I already screwed it up at my first opportunity into the presentation. All right, damn it. Okay, so, all right, I got to get out of the iframe to go to the next one. So here's a really quick example of Framework7. This is using a blank template that we've created. So what we're showing here is a material-looking theme. We have our nav bar with the title in there. We have some Laura Ipsum. So all well and good. So what does the HTML for something like that look like? Well, we have a div, and we've given it an ID of application or app. And then in there, we're basically just using the components. We're saying, hey, let's have a Framework7 status bar, and then we're going to create a view. And inside that view, we have a page. And then we just have our nav bar, our block title, and our block content. So all of that is, there's nothing we have to do with regards to CSS and styling and making sure that things are aligned properly. Framework7 is going to handle that for us, and it's going to make it look exactly like a material application. So that's pretty neat, but the only tag that you would recognize in that is div, right? Everything else is completely from Framework7. And that's where I've kind of put the cart before the horse, and I should have explained some more stuff about Vue. Now, generally, I do this presentation as a standalone in a much bigger conference, but since this day is completely about Vue, I don't think I'm going to have to go too deep into it. I'm going to trust that the other presenters have done that. But let's just put in the giant monolithic description of Vue. So I'm not even going to bother to read that, and I never do. But what I really want to call out to you is the fact that the reason I love using Vue is because you can put it into any application that you have. So if you have plain vanilla JavaScript, you can start using Vue right away. You can take advantage of a lot of that stuff. If you already have an application that's using React, you can actually use Vue inside a React application. You can use it inside an Ember application, inside an Angular application, because Vue itself is only considering the Vue part of your model view controller. So it doesn't really care if you use its routing and all sorts of other fun stuff. You can just use it to create the Vue side of your application. And I think that's where Vue is incredibly powerful. And it's great that you can say Vue like 8 times in a sentence and have it mean like 3 different things. So isn't English great? Isn't that like when you buffalo, 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 and that's actually a sentence? You can use buffalo 8 times in a row in a sentence is actually a valid English sentence. English, gotta love it. All right, so if we take a look at this in a little bit more detail, say we're starting our application, we need to start off with our HTML. This is all that you need. Basically, you have your title tag for your app, and you have your body tag. And inside the body tag, all you need is a div. So we just need an entry point. We just need somewhere to attach the rest of our components into your HTML. So you can imagine if you have a React application or an Angular application and it's created a bunch of HTML for you, you can actually start sticking Vue in there just by having one div or one component where you can attach all of the Vue stuff in there. So in this case, when we build up the rest of our application, we're just going to be attaching to that div with an ID of app. So what does the JavaScript look like? In this case, a lot of it is a bunch of imports. So recently, Framework7 has been updated to version 2, and the Vue binding has been updated to version 2 as well. What we're going to be doing in our application here is I'm pulling in all of the Vue components, all of the Vue styles. But nicely enough, what they've done in version 2 is that if you're only using a Framework7 button in your application, you will only need to import the button. So you're going to be able to really reduce the size of the JavaScript, of the CSS that you deliver to your application, which will be fantastic if you're doing progressive web apps or if you really want to care about speed and parsing time. But because I'm lazy, as I have explained before, I'm just importing everything for this example. So when it gets right down to it, we're just telling Vue to use the Framework7 Vue and the Framework7 components. And then we're creating our base application. And we're telling it right there in the very first line where we have element is app. Basically, that's the ID that we want to go find in our HTML, and that's where we're going to attach everything. I found the cough button in time, I think. All right, and then the template itself is just the app template. I acknowledge the 30 minutes from my daughter. So we've actually roped her into doing this. It's great. So yeah, and then the template that we're going to use is the application template. That's going to be the first component that we inject into our HTML. And then we have a few things in here that are Framework7 specific, where you can give it the ID, the name of the application. And here's the thing that I was talking about a little bit earlier, where the theme is set to auto. In this case, it's going to figure out whether or not we're on an Android device or an iOS device and provide the proper UI depending upon what device it is. However, a lot of times people will want to stick with one certain theme, and I've seen it a lot, especially with Google applications. They use the material theme no matter if they're on Android or iOS. So you could basically specify that the theme is MD for material, and that's what it will always look like no matter what device you're on. And then from there, we're going to have our routes. And in the routes is where we're going to be able to say where we go to our different pages in the application. All right, so the JavaScript, not too terribly difficult to get started with. And when we take a look at the app.vue component, and in this case, what I've done to give a kind of a full example of a component is I've actually taken my app.vue and my home.vue and combined them into a single file. And so what we can see here is we have a couple of tags. The template tag is where you're going to put in all of your HTML, and the script tag is obviously where you're going to put in all of your script. And in Vue, you can also have the kind of the style tag where you're going to put in your additional CSS. So to me, this is one of the things that I really love about Vue is it doesn't get me into learning a new type of paradigm like React and JSX, where I'm putting JavaScript, HTML into my JavaScript, and JavaScript inside my HTML, and peanut butter in my chocolate, and all these other kind of crazy things. It's just that I am working with HTML and JavaScript. It's just that they happen to be in the same file separated by these tags. It's kind of the same paradigm that we're used to developing with. So in this case, all I'm doing is I'm grabbing the status bar, our view and our page with all of our blocks and stuff like that. Again, not terribly difficult in order to get a blank application up and running. Okay. So wait, am I saying that we can just compose my UI of a bunch of reusable components? And it's like, well, yeah, you're halfway through a day on Vue talks. That's exactly what I'm saying. Okay, so that's pretty cool. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to, Anna, okay, so my jacket's there, my bag's there. If this doesn't go right, I need you to grab them and head to the door, because I'm actually going to do some live coding now. That's going to be fun. The other thing is, in the slides, you can see there's like a down arrow there. All of the code that I'm going to be hopefully not completely screwing up is going to be available in the slides as well. And because my memory is so bad, I created a cheat sheet for myself, so I'm not even going to pretend that I remember all of this, but I'm going to refer back to this if things go badly. All right. So the other thing is I noticed that we're on 1024 by 768 screen, so that's going to be cool. Yeah, I don't know if there's going to be too good of a way for me to actually show the code and the screen at the same time. All right, so what I've done is I've already created the application itself. I've used this blank template that we have, and I've gone in and I've run npm install, because nobody wants to sit here and wait the 5 minutes as I run npm install on conference Wi-Fi. That's just a really bad idea. You're going to do it, are you? You're crazy. We all knew that, though. Thank you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to build a new component for this blank application where I'm just going to show some art. So what I have running on my system right now is a very simple web server. And every time I hit that URL, it's going to generate a random, and I say random because there's about, I think, 7 or 8 different artists that I have. So basically, I'm a nerd, and I love comic books, and one of my favorite characters is the original Sandman, who's the guy with the gas gun and the fedora and the trench coat. So basically, every time I go to a comic book convention, I will get somebody to draw me that, and that's kind of how I'm building up my collection. So each time we hit this URL, I'm going to get a new artist, and I'm going to get the image name, and we're going to use those images and display them in our application. All right, hopefully that makes some sort of sense. All right, so we have our basic application. It's up and running here. All right, let's write some code. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is go into my app.view component, and then we're going to make sure that things are actually working correctly. So the first thing I'm going to do, since we're here at FITC, I'm going to say the color theme is red. Now, if everything works, when I save this, the entire application, the color theme will change to red. If it doesn't, Anna, grab the bags, head to the door, okay? Great. All right, perfect. All right, saving that. Oh, it actually works. So let me just flip back over here. All right, so in our template, we have basically a development server running so that anytime there's changes, it's immediately reflected into our application. So that's cool. That worked. That's always a good sign. It's a good first sign, at least. Let's see how I can screw that up. All right, so now what I want to do is let's go back over here. And inside our pages, we have our home page. And anytime I want to get a new piece of art, what I want to do is use the pull to refresh. So I'm going to pull down on the application, and it's going to it's going to make a web request in order to get the new art. So we're going to add the pull to refresh functionality to this home page. So what we want to do, excuse me, is on this page component. We're going to put this new attribute, and it's called PTR. So for those of you, there may be 1 or 2 graybirds in here that remember that pointer in C++ and in C, but in this case, it means pull to refresh. So some people actually remembered, but hey. All right, so now that we have PTR in there, it's going to tell us that this page is going to be set up for doing pull to refresh. And then we're going to, on pull to refresh, so I'm going to use Vue shorthand to create this binding that anytime the refresh event is fired, I want to call this callback. And I'm going to call the callback on refresh. All right. So now anytime pull to refresh happens, we want to call this on refresh callback. So if we go down here to, let's see, just in case, I'm going to add I've done this before, and I've had the linter really complain on me, and it really screws things up. I'm going to just add this globals for picture store in there, and then we're going to add in a new section called methods. And in there, what we want to do is on refresh. So again, this is our, see, this is the new MacBook keyboard. It's really hard to type on. I spend most of my time with an external keyboard connected into it, and it's so much nicer. So all of those things that you hear on the internet are true. These keyboards are not great. All right, so the function itself, it's going to take in the event, and it's going to take in a callback called done. And basically, once we're done with whatever we need to do in this refresh lane, that's the callback that we need to invoke in order to make the spinner stop spinning. So in this case, we're just going to do a fetch. I just have this running on localhost, port 8974, because that port is never used. And then we need to take the response and call response.json. So we get the response back from our web service, then we convert it to JSON, and then we take that data and we're going to do some fun stuff with it. All right, so first off, I'm going to take the picture store, and we're going to unshift the data that we get back. So Twitter and Instagram are driving me completely nuts because I actually just want to see all of my data in reverse chronological order. So I don't understand why they can't figure that out, that's what users actually want. But in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that any of the new data goes at the head of the array by doing the unshift. And then we're just going to do local storage dot set item. Let's call it pictures. And we're just going to take the entire picture store and set it in there. All right, so we're going to save it off for later, so when the user comes back into the application, it's stored locally. And then once we have it stored, everything is all ready to go. We're going to call done, and from that point, we're all set to go with our pull to refresh event. So this is going to go off, make a web request, get that JSON back, convert it into something we can push into our array, and then store it locally. So the fun thing about this is I didn't set up picture store at all. I completely skipped something trying to jump ahead. So what we really need to do is go back into this main.js file where we're doing a lot of our setup. And because we're not going to get into talking about Vuex or anything like that, we're just going to do a very simple store where we're grabbing things from local storage. So window.picture store is equal to JSON dot. Okay, so basically what we're doing here is we're going to set up that picture store array as anything that we get out of local storage called pictures, and we're going to parse that. And then if this is the first run of our application and there's nothing in there, we're going to say, or just give me an empty array, because that's all I really need. Okay, so with a little bit of luck, okay, the application is refreshed. We have the application tab open. There's nothing there for local storage, so I'm going to try to pull down. There's our pull to refresh spinner happening, and lo and behold, we got something back here. So we have an artist of J. Ojic, and we've got the path to the image. So far I haven't screwed things up. I'm just going to do this right now, because I usually don't get this far without something going to hell in a handbasket. All right. So now we've got some data into our application. We need to be able to display it somehow. And this is where we're going to get into creating our new component. So going back over here, I want to, under source, let's create a new file. Let's call it picturelist.vue. All right, so we got this brand new file here. So anybody using Sarah Drasner's Vue snippets in Visual Studio Code? Nobody? Oh, one? Oh, okay, good. Good. Thank God somebody's here. They're fantastic. Sarah is an amazing Vue developer. You should really give her a follow on Twitter. And if you're using Visual Studio Code, and why aren't you, you should really install those snippets. All right, so if I just type vdata, no, sorry, vbase in this case, and tab, and I can't type correctly, so vbase. All right, vbase tab, basically our component is like populated to begin with. So that's great. We got that quick jump ahead here. I'm going to get rid of the style section because we won't need it for this particular thing. And so what I'm going to do from this point is I'm going to use some Framework7 components in order to build up a bunch of cards to be able to display our artwork. All right. Anna, have I said anything that remotely resembles English at this point?
Not really.
Okay, cool.
You talked about red.
I talked about red? Okay, cool. Red was good. That's where I lost you? Excellent. My daughter did a presentation on Thursday here in Toronto on when girls start to fall off of STEM, and I'm very proud of her, but I'm also at the same time trying to regain my status as the premier presenter in the family. I don't know if it's going to work out, but I'm going to give it a shot. All right, so we're going to use the F7 card component, and what we want to do is we want to loop through all of our picks in pictures. So we need to go through here, and we got to go through our entire array, grabbing each picture from the array. And we want to say v.bind, and I'm going to be really lazy here because I don't have a unique index in my array. I'm just going to say picks.artist because I don't want Vue to complain. All right, so we have our card component, and I can't type. And I kind of feel like, oh yeah, look at that. There's an error right there. I need an equal sign there or everything goes to heck. All right, so in our card component, I want to have a header so that we can actually display the name of the artist. And in that case, we just want picks.artist, and that'll give us his name or her name, as the case may be, depending on the artist. And we have our card header, and then let's have the body, in this case, card content. And in the card content, we want to display an image. So our image is just going to be, let's bind the source attribute to pix.image. And because, again, like I said, I don't know CSS very well and I'm super lazy, I'm just going to do this with equals 100% because I want the image to take up the entire width of the container that it's in. So I know that probably 87 to 89% of you right now are cringing over seeing that, but it's just to get the demo going. All right. So we have all of our components in our template. Sorry? Oh yeah, look at that.
I make that one all the time too. Blame autocorrect.
I do blame autocorrect. Because actually, yeah, it really shouldn't. Because it should actually be pulling from the tags that F7. I wonder if there's an F7. No, there can't be an F7 card contest. I've never seen that before. But anyway, thank you for spotting that before it became even more embarrassing later. All right, so again, I'm just going to add this globals in just to make sure we don't complain about that. No, go away. All right. So now we have, we just need to give it we need to give our component a name so we can import it in our application or homepage later. And I need to give it some data. And in this case, the data function is just going to return pictures. So this is where we're loading pictures from, and it's just window.picture. Thank you. All right, well, with a little bit of luck, that is actually correct. Now, my other thing I constantly do is I will screw up calling picture store. So let's just go back really quickly. Yeah, I called up picture store in that app and that part of the app, and I called up picture store in this part of the app. So far so good. I'm actually consistently naming things, in which we all know naming stuff is one of the hardest problems in computer science. Spelling is the actual first biggest problem. All right, so now we have our component, it's created. Now, if we go back into our home page, we need to be able to use this. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I need to import the component. So if we import, now, did I actually, yeah, okay, cool. Just making sure I called it picture list. And see, I really can't type. All right, so we're importing the picture list from the picture list component, and we have, wait, yeah, all right, cool. And we need to be able to say, we need to be able to define that component so that we can use it in our HTML. And in this case, yeah, I'm actually spelling it correctly, that's good. So in our components, we'll just call it picture-list, and we get it from picture list. Okay, so no, and everything went to heck in a handbasket. Yes, thank you. See, the linter catches everything. All right, great. So we've created our new component, we've imported it into our home page, now we just have to use it. So it should be just as easy as grabbing all of our lorem ipsum here, which we don't need anymore, and say picture list. So now, if this works, I'll be very happy. If it doesn't, you guys can all scream at me, or sorry, you folks can all scream at me. So save. All right, so the first thing that happened is, remember we did a pull to refresh earlier, so it's gone off and it's found this picture of the Sandman drawn by Jay Ojic. So if I do pull to refresh again, you know what, just one sec. There we go. And now we have one from Toronto Zone, Francis Manipul. We have one from Dave Wachter. We have one from Tom Fowler, who's an Ottawa artist. So we can go down here and we can see they're in reverse chronological order. And we've just basically created a new image viewing component that we can now kind of embed in any kind of application at all. So that is where I'm really excited about Vue, is it allows you to kind of take these components and build them up very quickly, compose components of other components. It's really kind of powerful. All right, so that is basically the demo. Back over to some slides. All right, so again, when you see the slides, all of the code is down here. You'll be able to recreate it if you absolutely want to. All right. So that's great. So how do we get all of these single file components in the application? Now, if you're kind of looking at Vue, you'll notice that it's like, oh, we're mixing the HTML, the CSS, and the JavaScript all in one file. And we've all been told for many, many years not to do that. And it's like, okay, that's all right, because we just use Webpack. It's super easy, right? Webpack is easy. No. Webpack is not easy, but I don't want you to get discouraged. I don't want you to like run for the hills right now, because we have created some templates that'll make it easier for you to get started and stuff like this. So in each of the following templates that I'm going to show you, we've done some setup for you for Webpack, for Babel, and for ESLint. Of course, you can kind of change these things around, but what we wanted to do is give you a way to get started without having to, think too much and set up too many things. As well, we have some unit testing and end-to-end testing set up for you, so you don't have to go off and try to decide which unit testing you're going to add into your product as well. And as well, we've set up a number of default layouts using Framework7 and Vue. So here's the first one, blank, which is the one that I use for the demonstration. And you can see how it looks both on Android and iOS. And then we have a tabs template. One thing that I should point out, on iOS, of course, the tabs are at the bottom where they should be. And on Android, you can see the tabs are at the top, which is where Android for many, many years said that they should be. Now you know there is a bottom tabs component on the material theme, but you can also set a parameter in Framework7 to switch those tabs to the bottom so that they look correctly. So you can do that. And then we have a split view pane in iOS. So perhaps you're in a tablet, you can have the split view show completely, but if you're on a device, you kind of got the hamburger menu button there. And the same thing on Android. So there's a number of templates that you can get started in building your application. So in order to get started, so I work on the open source project Apache Cordova, and what you can do is if you install the Cordova command line, then you can start creating applications using this. And then you just specify the template. So there are the split panel templates, the blank template, and the tab template. And then you just basically go into the application directory, run npm install, go make a cup of coffee, because you're going to need to do that. There's a lot of things that need to get installed. Then you come back, you run the development server, and you're off and running. You can start editing components right away. So I find that to be an extremely powerful way of doing stuff. And it may be you just even want to use this for doing some prototyping. It's a really good way of doing stuff. So one of the next presenters, Alex Blom, will be talking about using the Corber CLI, which is also another great way of starting with your applications. And later on today, Jen Looper is going to be talking about NativeScript, which is another fantastic way of building mobile applications. So if you actually go this path and you want to start deploying your application, what you end up doing is you add the platforms that you want to target, whether it's Android or iOS. And then you just basically run a production build. And then once you run a production build, you have a Cordova application all set up. And then you just go through the regular Cordova path in order to get your app into the App Store or the Play Store. So we give you a way of doing not only web applications, but getting yourself a native application into the store as well. But the thing that I really want to talk about, wait, I seem to be missing a slide. Sorry. I wanted to talk about this. Honestly, I don't care if you use everything that's in this template or if you start importing your own stuff. Really what we want to do is combat the process of just like JavaScript fatigue and analysis paralysis. If you decide between like Webpack, Gulp, or NPM scripts, that's one major decision you have to make. And then you have to decide like which unit testing framework you want to use and which like end-to-end testing framework you want to use and which the thing goes on and on and on. So the thing about these templates is it actually gives you the ability to like just start writing code immediately and playing with some stuff and trying some things, which I think is pretty powerful. So that's the thing that I forgot to mention earlier. So once you have your app all ready for production, you can deploy it to the Play Store or the App Store. And then going forward into the future, what we want to do with these templates, we've been adding progressive web app support, so to make it easier for you to target Android, iOS, and progressive web apps. Personally, I want to take Apache Cordova as far into progressive web apps as possible. A lot of stuff that Apache Cordova does now with deploying to Android can almost completely be replaced with progressive web apps, so I would love to see more of that. We're trying to decrease as much of the boilerplate code for writing progressive web apps by using Workbox. Workbox is this great tool from Google, which allows you to set up all of your service workers. And trust me, you do not want to write a service worker by hand. It's a pain. Lots of things can go wrong. Use Workbox. It's very well tested. And then we want to make sure that all of these templates, when you run them out of the box, they score very high on Lighthouse, which is a tool that Google, again, has invented in order to give you an indication of whether your progressive web app will perform well or not. So basically, we want to get as close to 100% as we can with the templates. And then if your application only scores 79%, that's on you because you've screwed up something. I'm not going to take responsibility for it. So, yeah. All right. So that is basically the end of my talk. My daughter's telling me we have 5 minutes, so that is fantastic. We do have some time for questions. Hopefully there is one or two. If not, you can run off and try to grab those pieces of pizza before they're all gone. I will not be insulted. And again, at the end of the presentation, there is a resource slide here, which gives you the links to all of the templates, as well as to Sarah Drasner's Vue snippets, which I really recommend for VS Code. All right, thank you.